Uh, Reading from a TMZ article. I don't really go on TMZ a lot. I think that site is kind of toxic at times, but I go on there occasionally. I saw an interesting article. Um, Charles Barkley, the TNT and Inside the NBA analyst, ripped into Boston Celtics guard Kyrie Irving, calling him, quote, the most miserable person I've ever seen, unquote. Of course, Kyrie Irving the last couple of weeks have been one of the adjectives I saw describe him has been, quote, he's been detached, sullen, moody. Uh, Boston hasn't been playing well as of late. Prior to last night's game against the Golden State Warriors, where they won, I believe, by a final score might have been 123-95, I think it was. They show what they're capable of being when they play together as one unit and firing on all cylinders. But for the most part, it's been a somewhat uneven season for them. Um, Kyrie Irving was heard loudly saying in the presence of reporters leaving the TD garden. What was it? I think he said something like, I'm not going to miss any of this shit when I'm gone. Um, Quote, he said, I'm not going to miss any of this shit when I'm done playing. And the article goes on to say how NBA Commissioner Adam Silver was asked about the star's sensitive feelings and others in the NBA who have seemed less than thrilled with this season. And he stuck up for his guys. He said, part of it is a direct product of social media. I think those guys were talking about when I meet with them, what strikes me is that they are truly unhappy. Another guy that comes to mind is probably Kevin Durant. Charles Barkley was asked about his opinion on ESPN's program Get Up, and he said that when asked about Kyrie Irving's opinions about that, and he said, "A quote: I think that's probably the stupidest thing I've ever heard Adam say." Talking about the commissioner. Um, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard any commissioner say. Listen, these guys are making 20, 30, $40 million a year. They work 6, 7 months a year. We stay at the best hotels in the world. They ain't got no problems. That's total bogus. And then Barkley said, let me tell you something else. Kyrie Irving, I've never seen a person so miserable. He wanted to talk about how he was a millionaire. He's famous. He's a superstar. He's got a championship ring, and he's been in movies. He's got to be one of the most miserable persons I've ever seen. And he said, dude, we're paying you $40 million a year. You ain't never going to get away from this. All right. Now, I know a lot of people don't like Charles Barkley. A lot of people see him as a sellout, hypocrite. All right. I can see the argument for both sides. I do think that a lot of these younger guys, a lot of these younger players aren't built for tough. You know what I'm saying? Psychologically. A lot of these guys, they just not built, to me, tough to handle certain shit. Um, I do see a lot of excess whining about certain shit. Okay. I think you could blame narcissism for that. I mean, we live in a more narcissistic society where people feel like they're entitled to shit, but yet they don't like to be bothered or burdened with certain shit. Okay. Um, just trying to think about this one. Charles has a point. These guys do make a lot of money. I guess. They're earning millions of dollars to play a sport that most of us play for recreation. Uh, they only play half the year. The other half of the year, however, they still have to make sure they stay in reasonable shape. So really, it is still a full-time job. It's just that they're only active 6 or 7 months of the year. They don't have to deal with the financial worries that most of us have to worry about. Um, as long as they're smart with their money, if they do still have to deal with financial issues and worry, then that's their own fault. And like they said, there is the fame and adulation that comes with it, the celebrity, opportunities that most of us only can only dream of. So in that aspect of it, I kind of feel Charles Barkley like with the whining. In some ways, I want to say, yeah, you kind of can shut the fuck up about some things, Kyrie. Okay, but I got to say this too. Uh, Social media in today's era is far different than what Charles Barkley played. See, when Charles Barkley played, and only began to slowly change toward the very last few seasons, but still, the internet was in its infancy. Like it really still wasn't really anything. But for the most part, the criticism that Charles Barkley dealt with was with beat writers. All right, he'd read an article, read what they had to say. He'd turn on the ESPN, hear what some of the people had to say. But the talking head programs, they still weren't really as 24/7 as they are now. Like when I was growing up, the biggest talking head programs was probably something like sports reporters. All right. And their critiques were more, I don't know, man. It seemed more professional. It didn't really seem to ever bleed into psychological shit. You know what I mean? It was always about their production. You know, are they playing well and all this stuff. All of this Skip Bayless, psychologically weak and someone who's clutch and all this type shit or got this gene. We didn't hear shit like that back then. I'm pretty sure Charles Barkley did do a lot of criticism, but like I said, it was refined to a certain space, on a certain segment, on certain shows. Maybe that first Jim Rome show that he had back in the early to mid '90s. Like I said, sports reporters, local media, Philadelphia, and then Phoenix. All right. It wasn't a constant noise of criticism like you have today. We have 24/7, 365 days a year sports media talk on television. Then you have radio, all right? Satellite radio, online. When people say some of the worst shit that you can think of, it can psychologically get to you. Can you imagine turning on the radio? Excuse me, not radio. Fuck, I'm at. Hello, my baby. Hello, my honey. Hello, my ragtime gal. Like it's 1925 or something. Can you imagine turning on the internet and typing in your name and seeing like memes of like, I don't know, your head on a chicken's body, or someone making comments about your appearance. I saw somebody in the comment section in TMZ article, put a link in the description box. Someone says something like, well, Kyrie, you don't have to worry about the cameras being on your face because they don't want something like he's ugly or something. Like that's another thing. Like what the fuck does what he got to look like got to do with his game? Like that's a weird. There's something new I've seen with a lot of young millennial fans, man. Like dudes that's overly obsessed with other men's physical appearance. Like that's something that females should be more concerned about. You should be more concerned about what Trae Young is averaging this year, or how his game is, or Kevin or Kyrie Irving's game, not whether somebody is ugly or not. And really, I strongly believe that's really a lot. To me, honestly, I think a lot of that shit is self-hatred, because I noticed that the people who get criticized the most for their looks, quote unquote, is usually by other black men, and usually it's black men that have strong African features, like a Kyrie Irving or a Trae Young or a Greg Oden or a LeBron James or even a Draymond Green. Now, I've called him donkey myself, but that's just to be disparaging. All right. I noticed that with some of you dudes. A lot of you dudes suffer from a lot of severe self-hatred issues, but you're too stupid or ignorant to even know what it is. But you don't realize yet you haven't been called out on it. But anyway, getting back to the point of the video, Kyrie Irving does have a point, about how social media is, man. It's mean. Altogether, there's a evil entity, an evil side of the internet, and if you let it, it can consume you. Uh, I gotta say this though, having defended Kyrie with that, at the end of the day, I kind of have to still side with Barkley a little bit on this, because accountability has to be part of this as well. Kyrie, you asked to be traded. You demanded to be traded. You demanded to be the head dog. You felt like you weren't getting your respect in Cleveland. You demanded to be traded. You went to Boston. Now, what you're seeing now is sort of the same treatment that the media gave LeBron before he was winning championships. LeBron was not a media darling the first 7 or 8 years of his career. He definitely wasn't a media darling the first year after he left Cleveland. He was a villain. So while I do believe that the media is blaming Kyrie far too much for the problems in Boston, it's not his fucking fault. The guy that need to be pointing the fingers at more so than anybody is the head coach and Gordon Hayward for the most part this season, although his play has been lifted up a little bit lately. Still kind of too sporadic, but he's been playing better overall lately. These guys need to be blamed more. And the fact that the team just hasn't been playing well together, and there's a lot of different issues. And you can kind of say social media and the mainstream sports media has played a role in the problems with the locker room in Boston. You know, but still, Kyrie, you asked to be traded there, so there's some accountability there. You get what you asked for. So I guess at the end of the day, I kind of agree with Barkley's 65%, and I agree with Kyrie's 35%. I guess that's kind of how I break it down in that one. But tell me what you guys think.